Hello, welcome to the Fight Life Nation podcast. Hey guys, there's a topic that I wanted to talk about. It's very interesting to me. I'm very into it. It's going on in the UFC right now. It has to do with gambling. It has to do with betting. It has to do with a gentleman who is a coach who has a Discord making picks. And it's leading to show some corruption in the UFC, which is probably the worst nightmare that the UFC could have right now. All right, let's get into it. So if you go back to the MMA Hour and the from Monday, that was December 5th, it was yesterday, Ariel Helwani went in depth with this. This is where I'm getting all the information. If you want an in-depth look at what's going on in the scandal, I highly recommend you go there. I'm just going to give you a brief synopsis of it and give you my opinion on it. On the Ariel Helwani show, on the MMA Hour, he went over on April 8th, around this time, the 1% Club was created. Okay, this is a timeline that he's giving to talk about how all this came about. So the 1% Club is a Discord that was started by James Krause, who was a fighter for the UFC. He then became a coach, coaches out of Glory MMA. He's actually been a really hot coach right now. One notable fighter that fights for him is Brandon Moreno. Laura Sanko trains at his gym. There's multiple fighters that train at the gym. He coaches a lot of guys in the UFC and PFL and Bellator. But he started this 1% Discord. And basically what a Discord is like there's an app. It's called Discord. And it's basically like a big group chat. You can go and you can join it. And for most of the time, YouTubers have it. And when you're a fan of a YouTube channel, you would join the YouTubers Discord, and it's just it's a place where fans can talk amongst each other without the YouTuber being on YouTube, right? Because you would talk in their live chat, but maybe he's not on YouTube at the moment. This is a way to do it. So let's say, for example, if it was like Ariel Helwani wanted to do his own Discord. All these people that just watch the MMA Hour that want to talk MMA, it gives them a place to talk. In this case, the 1% Club, started by James Krause, was a place where people went and he gave out gambling tips or gambling picks. He would give out fight picks. You see picks for stuff given out all the time on AM radio. If you turn on AM radio on Sunday morning, they're going to tell you all the football picks. Normally, they'll give you a free one, and then you got to call in, and you'll get the rest of the games, and you're going to pay a service fee. And it ranges, but those guys are normally not coaches and players. In this case, James Krause is a coach, which makes it very sketchy. So April 8th, he opens up the Discord. On May 31st, James Krause 1% Club podcast launches with the first episode interviewing Glory MMA fighter and former flyweight champion Brandon Moreno. Why is this important? Because this is the way that he advertises Discord. He was able to advertise the 1% Club by having a podcast. He's going to get good fighters on there, so people are going to watch. I know I've watched the 1% Club. It was a pretty good podcast. James Krause is a very entertaining guy. June 3rd, the 1% Club releases betting breakdown for the UFC 56 Volkov versus Rosenstruik. That was on the podcast. So right away, he's giving out tips there, basically giving out breakdowns. But you're not getting the meat. The meat is when you join the club. That's when you really get the best stuff. He's going to give you the best advice. This is not crazy. This is what happens a lot of places, A lot of people do this. Like I say, what's weird is that it's a UFC coach. August 1st, James Krause joins the MMA Hour and discusses his betting habits. On that interview, if you go back and watch it on the MMA Hour, it's available. Once again, I'll link down below to the interview yesterday, or to Ariel's breakdown. But on that interview, he basically says, hey, I make more betting than I do coaching. And it's not even close, because most fighters don't make that much. He only makes 10% of what those fighters make. And, he's always on the road. He's always busy. There's a lot of expenses. He doesn't make as much. Betting, he says he bets every fight. Obviously, now he's making money off the 1% Club. So, this seems to be working out really well for him. But he was very candid about it, and he talked about it almost smug-like. You're going to get some people that kind of raise their eyebrows when you do that. And one of the things Ariel asked is, hey, do you bet on your own fights? Do you bet on your own fighters? And he said, yes. One thing Ariel mentions that he doesn't say is I never asked him, does he bet against his own fighters? All right, jump ahead. We go to October 17th. UFC releases a memo notifying fighters and close associates they can no longer gamble on UFC fights. Why is this important? Because beforehand, there was no rules. You could gamble all you want in the UFC. There's a fighter that I've taken pictures of before when he fought in Long Beach, Justin James. He goes by Guitar Hero. Famously, he bet his last purse on himself to win, and he lost. This is something a lot of fighters have done. A lot of fighters, they bet. It's just a common thing. They really pump it too in their ads. So you figure a lot of these fighters are sponsored by gambling websites, and they're into gambling. It's just something that happens. Now the UFC says, hey, no fighters can gamble. And I believe in that memo it said anyone close to you, but I think it didn't actually say managers can't gamble yet. But that's what was implied. On November 5th, the betting line for Derek Minner versus Shailen Nurdenbeke moves heavily prior to the bout beginning. So what happens is when you bet on an MMA fight, you can do multiple kinds of bets. You can do win by knockout, win by submission, win in the first round, win in the second round, fight goes to decision. You can do all kinds of different bets. In this case, there was a lot of money coming in on Derek Minner being finished by KO or TKO, and also Derek Minner or the fight ending before a minute and a half. And these odds were like to begin with, they were big, so they weren't very nice odds to bet on. People weren't going to be for it. You had to risk more money than you would get back, or you get back very little compared. But when so many people started betting on this fight, the odds makers try to move the line, because the idea is the odd makers want to move the line so that way you can everybody makes money. They want the lines to be as close as possible at the end of the day, so everybody makes money and the odd makers don't go broke. So they move the line to make it work even less attractive to bet on that fight, but people kept dumping in money. So then the odds makers are like, hey, something's up. November 6th, UFC betting integrity partner Don Best Sports to begin a thorough review following the Minner-Nurdenbeke bout. So Don Best Sports is the integrity partner of UFC. Basically, they're the guys that UFC hires to make sure that everything's on the up and up. Kind of like a self-policing company. They don't want the real people to get at them, so they hire these guys to be like their self-policers. When I used to work in a meat department, we had a company called Ecolab, and they would come in and they would be like our health department, and they would monitor our cleanliness. They would what would you call it? Audit our cleanliness. They would make sure everything looked good, make sure all our dates are right, because it's better to get in trouble with Ecolab than it would be to get in trouble with the health department. Health department will shut you down. So that's what Don Best Sports was. But now they're looking in. They made an announcement. Hey, they're looking into this bout because it was very suspicious. We move ahead. November 11th, UFC President Dana White addresses the situation surrounding Derek Minner and Nurdenbeke, stating there's zero evidence of any wrongdoing. This was in an interview with like a scrum, and Aaron Bronstetter from TSN came out. And he asked Dana White like about the bout, and you really, if you go back and watch this thing, you can see it done live. Basically, Dana's like, "There's nothing to see over here. Don't worry about it. It's highly suspicious, but I promise nothing happened. There's no proof of anything." But it was a very, very it's kind of hilarious to watch because Dana's really dancing around the subject. November 19th, they have a UFC fight night. A fighter named Miles Johns, who trains with James Krause, he says in his post-fight interview that his coach has been suspended and not allowed to corner him. This is the first time anybody hears about it. They hadn't made any announcement about it. Nevada actually suspended James Krause. The Nevada Commission suspended it, and the UFC is going to honor that anywhere they fight. They're not going to say, okay, you're suspended in Nevada, we'll let you fight, and we'll let you coach in Florida. He's suspended. On November 19th, New Jersey Division of Gaming Enforcement notifies sportsbooks they are prohibited from taking bets on fights that James Krause is involved in. Why is this important? Because now the jig is up. Everyone knows that this guy is in the crosshairs. He's highly being looked at. And this is all bad for James Krause. They basically said nobody that is a James Krause fighter you can bet on. This is bad times. On November 24th, ESPN's David Purdom reports James Krause's YouTube channel and the number 1% Discord have been deleted. Once again, if you're on the up and up and you're just giving out fight picks that are A-okay and you're fine with, why would you delete it? There's got to be a reason you delete it. You probably delete it because you want to hide something. That's just my opinion. Maybe he's trying to fall back into regulation so that way he can go ahead and recoach again because, that is like his career is being a coach. But you figure if you have nothing to hide, you wouldn't delete anything. But basically, he closes his podcast, which was successful. He closes his 1% Club, which was successful before that. Now you can't do either. On December 1st, the Ontario Alcohol Gaming Commission of Ontario require Ontario gaming operators to stop offering and accepting UFC bets. This is all bad. This is a province in Canada basically saying we're not going to take bets on the UFC anymore. And this is a lot of money that's going to be lost. This is a tragedy for the UFC. So obviously the UFC wants to jump right on top of this. They want to fix this situation and right it. If you can't bet on it, a lot of people will lose interest. That's the idea that they're thinking, and they're right. But really, what's coming on is I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. Alberta joined on December 2nd. Alberta joins Ontario in no longer accepting UFC bets. So that's 2 provinces now. Provinces are like states. These are all in Canada. The UFC releases a statement on December 2nd. Addressing the James Krause Derek Minner fight. On December 2nd, British Columbia, Quebec announced they will continue to accept UFC bets. So what's going on with this Derek Minner fight? This Derek Minner Aaron Mbeke fight. You can go watch it on ESPN Plus. I actually watched it earlier today. Derek Minner, and these guys are undercard fighters. These guys are not guys that normal people would bet on. That's what makes this highly suspicious. This isn't like Kamaru Usman versus the gentleman who beat him for the title. I'm blanking, but this isn't a major fight. This isn't a top-rated match. This isn't John Jones DC. These guys are way on the undercard. You got to be a hardcore fan to even know who these guys are. So Derek Minner goes out there and he starts to fight. Throws a couple leg kicks with his right leg. Mbeke doesn't really faze him too much. And then Derek Minner tries to throw a left kick, and he winces in pain. And then he throws another left kick, and he falls to the ring. He goes back to the cage, falls down, and kind of holds his guard, and just doesn't really try to get out of it. You listen to the commentary. The commentary is like he's not doing anything to get up. He's just laying there. Mbeke is like throwing big giant elbows on him. He wasn't he wasn't making an attempt to get up. You could tell he was in pain. I don't think Derek Minner threw the fight. I think he went out there and tried as hard as he could for what he had. I think he was previously hurt. That's just my opinion. I don't know. But you can tell that there was some information that somebody knew that led gamblers to put a lot of money on this Aaron Mbeke to win. On Aaron Mbeke to win by TKO in the first round. And who would know all that information? Derek Minner's coach, who runs the 1% Club. That's craziness. Like you're basically betting against your own guy. Like this is like people talk about Pete Rose. I mean, that's baseball. These guys are like in fights. These guys can get hurt. If you knew your guy was that hurt, then why'd you go throw him out there to go fight? I don't know. This is a crazy situation. If you want to follow the whole thing, go back to Ariel Helwani and the MMA Hour. I'll link it down below. It's a good watch. You're gonna enjoy it. He goes through everything, but he has in-depth video. They have all the videos of everything, and he goes through them all. What does this mean for the UFC, and why do they care so much? Because if people don't believe in their product. If people think it's like the WWE, they're going to stop watching. Hardcore fans are still going to watch. People who are real hardcore into it. But you're going to lose the casuals, and that's what you don't want to lose. Those are the guys that buy the pay-per-view. Everyone that a lot of hardcore fans consider themselves like, oh, I'm the fan. These guys, they don't know nothing. But the guys who don't know nothing are the guys the UFC wants to buy the fights, because that's how they get all their revenue. Or at least that's how it used to be. Now they're ESPN Plus, and they don't get the revenue from the pay-per-views, but you get the idea. They want casuals to buy the fight so they can get bigger deals in. And that way they can get a bigger deal at ESPN Plus. But this is very interesting. They're worried about this corruption getting out. This is legitimately looks like a coach who's a pretty popular coach. He's a big guy in the sport, and he got busted for basically giving out inside information, like insider trading in Wall Street. You're not supposed to do that. We'll see what happens. We'll have to see. You got to wonder if there's going to be some legal ramifications. He might go to jail. This is pretty big. You can't know the result of the fight ahead of time, and then give that information away. That's highly a bad thing to do. But guys, if you really like this podcast, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Give me a follow. Follow me on Instagram, Fight Life Nation. I'd really appreciate it. I will see you guys on the next one.